How did the mainstream media go from telling us the actual truth to then feeding us nothing but lies? Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Disclaimer. Everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Okay, so earlier today I showed a video that Heather Fitzgerald's channel posted. Again, great clips. She has a way of just finding all of the old information from before everything got hella sketchy. Like, it was already sketchy the second that it happened. Pretty much within the first week, there was just insanity running amok, okay? Even before we knew who Bryan Kohberger was or even knew literally anything. Now, Heather puts together a whole bunch of clips. I'm only coming to you with the one thought that I had. Trust me, there's so many more, but that's what you guys can go and watch her video for. Again, the link for that will be in the description box. What I got from certain clips that she put into this last one is that I'm really kind of just dumbfounded about how it got twisted. And I know that the mainstream people do this on purpose for sensationalism and in order to sell the story. Because if they are being as dramatic and just disturbing as possible, that normally means that they're going to get the most traffic because humans are broken. Here lately, we've been talking a lot about Megyn Kelly. Normally, my Idaho videos get the most views out of everything else that I post. I actually kind of get sad because I post videos about other cases, other people whose stories also need to be told, and they get like 10% of the traction of the Idaho case. Or like whenever I started talking about the sheriff who shot the judge, whenever that one was super, super trending, it was getting all kinds of views, while still the smaller known cases were getting trickles. As much as I don't like just jumping on trends, Idaho is right here at this point, just the same way that Kylie Rodney's is right here at this point. So we're going to continue what we're doing here. But I really wanted this platform to grow so that people's voices can be heard and people's stories can be told that don't get as much traffic. And it's coming. We're just not there yet. I mention that to say that the videos that I have been talking about Megyn Kelly in are being hella suppressed. And honestly, this one will probably be a little bit suppressed too, because I'm talking crap about her again, be it just a minor fraction. Now, one of the clips that Heather played was this one.
And the other thing that they reported this week was that Kohberger had messaged at least one of the victims on Instagram at one point, and that it went into an unread folder. But that is now part of the investigation. Listen, I'm kind of weary when it comes to the Instagram accounts. Right when I first got the name before it came out from police, Bryan Kohberger, we had a source in Pennsylvania. Like, I immediately couldn't find any social media for him. Then when the name came out officially from the police, suddenly there were all of these social media accounts. Some of them were following the victims. So again, like, I'm kind of careful in that department because I know that people made up fake accounts. Yeah.
It could be fake.
Yeah.
Just the simple fact that Megyn and Bryan Inton were having this conversation where Bryan Inton blatantly tells her, I looked, there was nothing about Bryan Kohberger anywhere on social media. And we know damn well that Bryan Inton has had some inside info. Now, I listened to Bryan Inton do an interview over on the Mile Higher podcast, and he does mention that he got a phone call personally that they had arrested someone in Pennsylvania, and he was given the information over the phone. Literally hours and hours and hours before it became public. He basically got notice the same time that the families were called in the middle of the night about the arrest. That's how it sounds anyway. And he claims, as you heard, that he didn't see anything. And it's interesting because the families were also claiming they saw no connection. They found nothing about Bryan Kohberger on literally anything of Kaylee's devices, and none of the other family members knew about him either.
Had you heard the name Bryan Kohberger before today?
No, we had not. That's just completely honest. Everything was kept under the wraps.
Well, we've been telling you that the families of these victims have been looking for any possible connections between Kohberger and their loved ones who were murdered. And we can tell you that the attorney representing the family of Kaylee Goncalves says they haven't found any connection. They don't believe that Kaylee knew Bryan Kohberger at all.
So if this was the story that mainstream was going with, that there was no connection, that nobody could find a connection at that point between Bryan Kohberger and the girls, and the fact that it wasn't until after Bryan Kohberger's arrest that all of a sudden, after his name is announced, all of these profiles pop up. I mean, just look at the ones that Heather has in her video. That's multiple right there. And of course, you're going to think that the one with all these followers on it is the most legit one. But these profiles are created and they are disposable. Not really disposable, but customizable, because you can go in and you can edit your name and you can edit your profile photo and you can edit your bio to match whatever you want to. There's a channel here on YouTube that does that to the creators that she doesn't like. But every few days, this channel goes in, changes their username to match really closely to another true crime creators channel out here, changes their photo to match one that goes with the channel that they're trying to impersonate, and then posts a video to where it looks as if that person is actually saying something when it's really just them shit-talking the person. Those Instagram accounts, those other accounts on social media that popped up most likely had a million names before they landed on Bryan Kohberger, and who knows what actually happened to them in the long run. Probably deleted because of all of the attention. But Heather makes a really good point here too about the Garrett Discovery Report. We've talked about that. And we've talked a lot about how full of crap this guy was and how he wasn't even asked to do any of this. He was asked to clear up another video. He had nothing to do at all with looking up anything when it came to Bryan Kohberger. He took that on himself. So he did an unofficial search with unofficial and unverified information that he basically pulled out of his own butt. Because it's funny, not until after that Garrett Discovery Report started getting tossed around to everybody by who? The Goncalveses. Everyone knows that it's true, and all of the creators that got the emails will attest to it any day of the week. But that Garrett Discovery Report came out, and all of a sudden the Goncalveses were changing their tune. All of a sudden the Goncalveses were also trying to claim that they had proof that Bryan Kohberger was stalking Kaylee and messaging Kaylee on social media. But what would happen? What would happen every single time? Paramount and every other channel that allowed them to talk about this and present it as part of the story of the Idaho 4 case would have that little bitty disclaimer at the top of the screen claiming that they could not verify the validity of those accounts. Yet even though they are telling you on the screen that they couldn't verify it, they're still allowing it to be said and be left as part of the story. Yeah, it's super, super twisted. But what I want to know is, are we ever going to know who this person is that apparently told this magazine?
A law enforcement source tells People magazine that investigators now have digital evidence that suspect Bryan Kohberger was persistently DMing one of the 4 victims before the murders took place on November 13th. Now, the source does not identify which one of the 4 victims was receiving these DMs, but those who've been following the case very closely, people have already been pointing this out online. News Nation reported, you might remember, that Kaylee Goncalves, her injuries were far more severe than those of Maddie, Xana, and Ethan's.
Because one would think, okay, Bryan Kohberger, he's supposed to be this cloud-based forensic super genius. Why would he have any social media in his own name if he's up to no good with it? Okay, I understand that. But that completely gets thrown out of the water when all this time later, the prosecution has now had to stand up and basically demand that we understand that all of those stalking rumors are false.
You acknowledge false that Mr. Kohberger allegedly stalked one of the victims. That's false. You know that to be false. Which one? That Mr. Kohberger allegedly stalked one of the victims. Yes. You knew that was false. Unqualified representation that Mr. Kohberger stalked one of the witnesses, and that's false.
That's false. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Fine.
And when this is being discussed, they're not talking about specific social media platforms or email addresses. They're speaking in general. So even if one would want to think that this cop that leaked this information might be saying that they found accounts that were under different names, that they dug way deep down into all of Bryan's stuff and found these Instagram accounts or these Facebook accounts or whatever accounts under names that weren't him, and that's why nobody could find it, that goes completely out the window once they told us those rumors were false statements. So how did it go from the mainstream media people, Bryan Inton himself? And you know damn well that if Bryan did it, Everyone else did it too. All these other big faces out there did the exact same thing that Bryan did, because how many true crime people did the exact same thing? I believed it before I even saw Heather's video, because I had reputable creators that I trust show me the screenshots and prove that there was no profiles matching Bryan's name, his likeness, anything following any of the victims, and they damn well weren't following anyone like him back either. People forget that there was a month and a half in between the crime and the arrest. Everyone had screenshots of everyone's social media to compare within like 30 minutes of us even finding out about this horrific tragedy. So how? How did it go from the mainstream media themselves coming out and claiming, I did the work, I had the name before the public had the name, and I did the work. I went in, I did the search, and there was nothing. There was no profiles. There was no profiles with his name that was doing anything with any regard whatsoever when it comes to the victims and their social media. There was nothing there. It wasn't until after his name became public that all of a sudden all of these accounts got created, and lo and behold, they're following the victims. Bryan Inton states that. Let me go ahead and replay Heather's clip right here.
And the other thing that they reported this week was that Kohberger had messaged at least one of the victims on Instagram at one point, and that it went into an unread folder, but that is now part of the investigation. Listen, I'm kind of weary when it comes to the Instagram accounts. Right when I first got the name before it came out from police, Bryan Kohberger, we had a source in Pennsylvania. Like, I immediately couldn't find any social media for him. Then when the name came out officially from the police, suddenly there were all of these social media accounts. Some of them were following the victims.
So how do we go from that to the bullshit that they've been doing here lately? How does Megyn Kelly go from hearing Bryan Inton say that, someone on her level saying, hey, I did the work, there was nothing there, I don't know where this all came from, but those profiles popped up out of nowhere after his name was already public, making them irrelevant. So how does Megyn Kelly go from listening to that come straight out of the mouth of a fellow colleague on her own show, Live Conversation, to what she's been doing here lately? How does any of the mainstream media people do what they're doing, knowing damn well Bryan Inton's not the only one that did that work? Because sensationalism wins every time. I mean, if people want to try to label Bryan Kohberger as some sort of actual murderer, an actual killer, somebody who's really sadistic in the head and just doing crazy shit, why wouldn't you leave it as there's no connection? Why wouldn't you leave it as, oh, we couldn't find anything? Because there wasn't any connection between Ted Bundy and a bunch of his victims either. Or the Gainesville Ripper guy that we talked about before. He didn't know any of them. He was just randomly walking up into houses and doing the shit as he wanted. So why not, if you're trying to make us believe that Bryan Kohberger is this horrible person, why not just leave it how it sounded? Why start twisting it and making it sound as if he was actually targeting somebody, that there was an actual target here? Why try to make it salacious if it's not? Because we would be having the exact same questions. If we didn't have all the salaciousness and all of the sensationalism, be it no connection still being the actual truth here, because regardless, it's come full circle. It came out originally, then all the boo-boo happened, the state had to come out and admit it, now here we are again. We've known from the beginning, the public has known from the beginning. So how did the public become so gullible, I guess? How did they become so gullible to fall for it after they were already told there was no connection between him and these girls? The only source that I can think of where any of that stuff came from is the Goncalves family. Unless they're taking the hit, because that could be possible too, because my theory doesn't have a damn thing to do with Kaylee. And it really could just be that they're allowing the Goncalveses to make the asses out of themselves that they have this entire time because it's a good deflection. Why stop them until you have to? Because they let Steve go on and on and on and on and on until they had to stop him from apparently meeting up with some sort of person that had information. They had to reprimand him and say, bro, stop, or I'm going to, you're going to be in trouble. Just quit. But they let him continue. And he's continued ever since. And it's crazy because he'll say things like, the state is still having issues finding a connection between Bryan and the girls and Ethan to people like Andrew Myers, a lawyer here on YouTube. But then we'll tell people like Chris from the interview room, oh, they have this connection and oh my gosh, they have all of this. Bro, which is it? Are you only telling people that are gullible the bullshit and telling people that are going to question you the truth? Because that's what it seems like. This is such a disgusting mess. But that is enough of my ranting. I am recording this on December 30th of 2024. I don't know exactly what date this is going to get posted. That's why you hear me saying I posted in my community tab earlier today the clips that Heather posted. But these thoughts can be posted at any given time. We're waiting for documents right now. And I have that big project that I'm still working on whenever we're doing the Blaker in Pain PCA comparison. And if you didn't hear from my little announcement in a previous video, that 93 minutes of edited, put together footage that I had got deleted somehow. So I've had to start completely over. And now I have 90 something minutes of raw footage that I now am editing. So my deadline that I gave myself to have that one out by January 1st, that's just not going to happen. But again, I want to thank Heather for putting all those clips together. I have other thoughts, but this was the main one that I had from all that. And I'm just like, holy crap, the same people that were coming out here and blatantly telling us that they did the work. They did the digging. They did the sleuthing. They didn't find nothing are now coming out and trying to tell us the opposite. And it's worked for so many people because, I mean, I didn't remember that those clips existed. I just always knew it was crap because none of it made any sense. They've never been able to substantiate it. And then lo and behold, we all got proven right whenever Mr. O. Xana popped up and angrily demanded that we understood that it was a false statement. I wonder how he feels about actually being on the naughty list this year. But again, there's millions of people at this point that probably forgot all about that and are now believing that he was stalking the girls, that he was trying to get one of their attention on social media, that he was some sort of crazy incel that was getting turned down left and right, because they're not listening to what we're listening to. They're not hearing all of the truths that we're hearing from people that actually knew Bryan, took classes with Bryan. I just can't wait for trial. I just want the truth. And if they end up coming up with some miracle piece at trial that actually makes Bryan the guy, and it makes sense, you're not going to see me fighting it. That's another thing I'm really hoping that people understand is that I am over here with my convictions as things are now. And just like Cy Ray, I hold the right to change my opinion if new evidence comes out because that's what critical thinkers do. They don't just stick with whatever they're feeling in here based off of what they have up here if new information comes out that can change that. I just don't see that happening. Because as of this point, we're on like the 21st request for discovery. The document hasn't been released yet. They have been hella slow. We've been getting the case summary update, but then like no information. Now, by the time this one posts, we might have all those documents out, in which I'll probably have cut this out. But if I still said it, that means that we still haven't gotten it. And we're still waiting on stuff from like the 20th. And today is the 30th. As of right now, the last document to be made public was posted on December the 18th. And there's been quite a few interesting titles drop on the case summary page since then that we're all very anxious to read. But I want to know what you guys think about this, about how they came out and blatantly told us there was no profiles and then all of a sudden his name became public and poof, there they were. What changed from them telling us the actual truth to our faces for like the first time ever to what they're doing now? I want to know what switched and why they're not keeping to fact. That's just insane to me. But again, thank you, Heather, for putting those clips together. Again, the link for her channel and this very specific video will be down in the description box. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you like the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please don't forget to leave a like on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed already. And please don't forget to make sure that that notification bell is set to all so you don't miss any of my rants, reviews, reactions, updates, or deep dives. See y'all.